Welcome to the podcast Vote Like Home. It's a podcast series that wants you to create a choice for you on the 9th of June where we're all going to vote. My name is Zoe, and today we're hosting candidates for the European Parliament, and today we have Sigrid Friis in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So our hope with this podcast is to get every single political party to join our podcast. And over the next 60 minutes or so, we will get to know Sigrid and your political standing and your relationship with international communities in Denmark, EU citizens especially. And we'll talk about your view on the EU, the future of the European identity and other things. And also stay tuned because throughout we're going to have some fun challenges and some fun questions. That's going to just test your knowledge, but also just to entertain us all. Okay. So I hope that's fine with you.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Great. Well then, welcome again. And then just a brief introduction for you that you can elaborate. So Sigrid Friis is the lead candidate from the Social Liberal Party, Radikale. And she has been involved in the European Liberal Youth on a European level and the International Federation of Liberal Youth. And she has also won several awards. One of them is the Woman of Europe from the European Women International and from the European Women's Lobby. So very impressive. And on a daily basis, when she's not campaigning intensively like these days, she works at the Danish District Heating Association. So welcome, Sigrid, and maybe you could just give us a brief introduction of things that I might have missed in my small intro.
Thank you, Zoe, and thanks for also briefly introducing me. It's true that I won the Women of Europe award, and I think actually one of the things that I'm very proud of is that it was given on the basis of communicating to the younger generations about the European Union, which I think is really important because our generation has so much at stake for this election. I'm 29 years old and I represent a generation that has heard all the promises being made by politicians about climate action. This is where we set the goal. Now we're going to solve the climate crisis together in the European Union. But I'm also part of the generation that's seen that it's all talk and not so much action. So that's my, I think, main contribution to this election campaign and hopefully to the European Parliament is, as you say, I work in the Danish District Heating Organization. In my daily life, I work with energy politics. I know that we have the green solutions. It's just a matter of actually putting them into action. So my main focus for this campaign will be a green energy transition, not just locally here in Denmark, but for the whole European Union.
Okay, very interesting, and thanks for that intro. So you touched upon your background already, but maybe going way back. So why did you decide to go into politics and maybe also European politics specifically?
It's a great question. I think a lot of my political engagement goes back to the year of 2016, which was quite a wild year politically, not just in Denmark, but in Europe and in the United States as well. I was part of Radikale Ungdom as an international officer, and I was planning a study trip to the UK when they had the Brexit referendum. So a delegation from my youth organization, the Social Liberal Youth of Denmark, went to campaign alongside with the Remain campaign, went door to door knocking to get out the vote, to convince the population to actually go vote on election day for this referendum about the future for UK in the EU. As everyone probably know by now, the Remain's campaign was not successful, and the Leave side won that referendum. And I think it was a huge shock for not just for the members of my party who have been there for the campaign, but for a lot of people in our generation. It was a shock that UK actually decided to leave the European Union. And if that wasn't shocking enough, then later that year I went to the United States. As you can hear, I'm quite a campaigner. So I went there to campaign for the Democrat side. Went there for the Clinton campaign. Was kind of thrilled to get to experience that historical moment where the United States would get their first female president. And again, it was quite a disappointment on election day. Huge shock to see the landslide win by Donald Trump in 2016. And I think that these events was quite a wake-up call for me, that you can't take anything for granted, you can't take anything for given. If you want to shape the future, if you want to play an active part in where the world is going, you better get involved. You better be engaged. You better put yourself out there. So that's basically what I've been trying to do since 2016, is to put myself on the spot, to actually stand up for what I believe in, trying to shape the future of European politics, where I think it's safe to say that my vision is quite different from the Brexit, the Leave side in the UK in 2016, or from the Republican Donald Trump campaign in 2016. But they've been like fuel to my political project of creating a Denmark that's more involved and engaged in the European Union, and involved and engaged in creating a sustainable future, green energy transition, and a progressive liberal future with human rights at its center. So actually, I think it's kind of the "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" vibe that made me get so involved in European politics.
Well, I think it's safe to say that you have a long history of political engagement at different levels, different continents and areas. So thank you for also elaborating on that. But now that you're the lead candidate for your party, not just the candidate, but the lead one, maybe you could tell us a bit about what are some concrete projects. So you mentioned already energy and climate. If and when you get elected, what are some key areas, or even committees or areas you would like to really get to work on, and as you said, like come with results as quickly as possible?
I do think that energy policies is kind of the key to solving a lot of the crises that Europeans are facing right now, in terms of the climate crisis, the temperatures rising. Then creating a green transition in the energy industry is key. Also in terms of security and defense, I think to become independent from buying oil and gas from Putin's Russia should be one of the main goals for any politician. I know that if I get elected on 9th of June, the top priority of my agenda will be energy policy, and will be entering the ITRA Committee of Industry and Energy. And I think the major policy wins for me would be to do a complete stop on Russian import of oil and gas, create 100% green energy for the European continent, and to actually show the rest of the world that we could become the world's first carbon neutral continent. I think that should be the aim of this mandate. I also really hope to work with the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policies, to create a more sustainable agricultural policy in Europe. I think it's necessary in terms of tackling the green transition and the climate crisis, and also in terms of creating a European Union that's ready to accept new member states. Could be Ukraine, could be Georgia, could be Moldova. When opening our union up to more member states, I think it's also important that we have an agricultural policy that's up to speed and up to date. And I think that the common agricultural policy we have now is a product of the past, not a product from the future.
Yeah, and I think with the CAP, one point that you're absolutely right about is that one thing is wanting reform as a political goal. Something else is, well, we need it, because when you have a country like Ukraine, but also others entering, which are huge agricultural countries, actually we don't have a choice. So it's good to have an active decision on it, so we don't just push it.
Definitely, and I think it's the window of opportunity that we might have needed so badly to actually create some long-term changes in the agricultural policies. We could have done it before, but now with the possible membership of Ukraine, I think it's the window of opportunity that we could have all hoped for.
Okay, so this podcast is of course for everybody, but it's also specifically to internationals or EU citizens living in Denmark that have the right to vote. Because as we know, then EU citizens living in other member states can vote at their national elections back home, but they can also vote in their host country, in this case Denmark. So maybe could you say a few words about why should let's say a person from Belgium or Romania living in Denmark, why should they register to vote? Because they have to register for the Danish elections and not, for example, back home. And then the second part is maybe what are your experiences with meeting and speaking to internationals in Denmark, and what is your and their engagement towards this election?
First of all, I think the most important thing is to remember to vote on election day. So honestly, I believe that you should vote for the country where you feel the most at home. If that's Denmark, then I really hope that you'll register to vote here in Denmark. And if it's your original country, then feel free to vote for the politicians there. I just really hope that everyone listening to this podcast will actually go out there and cast their vote for election day. I think it's important that we all get a say in shaping the future of Europe. If I were to give a good advice on why to vote in Denmark, I could say that, I mean, in technical terms, it's a small country with 15 seats, so you might really get some value for your vote if you cast it here in Denmark, as we have a minority protection of the vote. So a Danish vote might really count a lot. You can actually make an impact with casting your vote here in Denmark. I just last week I went door to door in Herning at a students' municipality or students' housing, and there were lots of international students here. So I talked to a girl from Lithuania, I talked to a guy from Poland and a guy from Germany as well, and they were not actually aware that they had the opportunity to choose whether to vote in their home country or to vote for the Danish politicians listed here in Denmark. So I think for them it was an eye-opener that to have a politician show up at their door, first of all, 2 months ahead of election time. So they were like, wow, you're out early campaigning. But I mean, you can't start early enough, can you? Yeah. So I think it is important to inform the internationals in Denmark that they have this opportunity, and that the choice and the decision is theirs on where they want to cast their votes. I think it's also important to provide information in English if you are a European candidate, information on, of course, how to vote, and also to provide information on your key policy areas in English. I haven't done this before on a European level, but I've done it on a local level, been involved in several local election campaigns, and as you might know, international citizens also have the possibility to vote for the local governments in Denmark. So in that scenarios, I've been out and also trying to inform people of their right to vote, and I think it's a privilege and it's a right, and I think it's also sort of an obligation to get involved in the democracy.
Absolutely. It's not just a right, it's a privilege. I think that's a good point. Now we're going to go to some quick yes and no questions. Fine. So the first one goes, should one be able to take a plane to travel from Aarhus to Copenhagen?
No, not necessarily. I would much rather that we invest in the infrastructure around the trains, so it should be easier to travel from city to city by train. The distances in Denmark are so tiny. I'm not one of those politicians who wants to forbid anyone to fly from city to city, but I just wish that we could politically create the structures to make it much easier, much cheaper, and much faster to go by train when the distances are so short. And that goes for all of Europe. I would say that we should make it so much easier to take the train. Could be from Copenhagen to Brussels as well. Why should the politicians be flying back and forth? Why haven't we created more sustainable ways of travel?
Okay. The next one goes, and you can just say yes, no.
Okay, so no explanations?
You can, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Otherwise, keep them brief.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, so number 2 goes, should EU countries stop selling arms to Israel?
Yeah, in the best case scenarios, I would say yes. First of all, it's just a short question. Okay.
You can. It's fine. You can elaborate quickly.
Yeah, because it's just it's a complicated debate, and I think first of all, it should be because of the civilians in Gaza who are right now paying the highest price of all, paying with their lives for a conflict that they are not involved in. I think when you say that you're targeting Hamas, then why are people being killed while they are receiving aid? I think that the situation in Gaza has gone out of control, and I wish that we weren't supplying the weapons for that. And also, I think we should focus our weapons in supporting Ukraine, because they really need the military equipment that we are right now not providing to Ukraine. We haven't lived up to the promises we gave them in 2022 when we said that we are going to deliver 1 million grenades, for example, and we haven't even delivered half of them.
Yeah, good point. Okay, third one, very different. Should cannabis be legalized?
Yeah.
You can say either EU, Denmark. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
I do think cannabis should be legalized, and they just done it in Germany, and I think that Denmark could learn from that. We have lots of struggles here in Copenhagen with illegal drug market, and I think it would be a great idea to legalize it. And I think that would also create a safer Copenhagen if we legalized cannabis.
Okay.
We could learn from our European neighbors.
Yes. Okay, next one goes, should farmers pay a tax on their CO2 emissions?
Yes, I think we should expect the farmers to pay a CO2 tax as well as any other industry. In my best case scenario, in my vision for Europe, every industry has to contribute to the green transition. That goes from the farmers to the transport to the car productions to the... I mean, every single part of the society has to contribute. We shouldn't treat anyone better or worse than other. And right now, I think that we've been handing out discounts for the agricultural businesses for too long, and I think it's time to catch up on that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, are there too many members of the European Parliament? And if so, should we reduce the number of MEPs? So what's your view?
No, I think it's important that for the European population to feel represented in Parliament, that we don't lower the number of politicians. Right now, it is a struggle to create strong bonds between the populations and the politicians, and I think it's a very important democratic value that you feel that you can hold your decision makers accountable. So if we look at it, we have 15 MEPs who are going to represent all of Denmark, 5.5 million citizens. I don't think that if you divide it out by numbers, that's not a lot of politicians per citizen. So no, I wouldn't want to lower that number. No.
Okay. Then I would want to know, are there any social media or apps and the like websites that we should ban? So here I'm referring to kind of the TikTok debate, but it could be broader than that.
No, I would say that we should make rules on how the platforms are allowed to behave, how they are allowed to navigate if they want to be a part of EU's inner market, if they want to be accessible for the consumers in Europe. I don't think we should do a total ban on everyone, but I think we should have high standards, and I think we should hold TikTok accountable as well as Meta or other of the platforms. It's important that we create the rules because they're not going to regulate themselves, none of these platforms. I think that's why it's important that we have the common inner market and the common policies in the European Union. Because I fear that a platform such as TikTok, they won't listen to a small country like Denmark. But when they listen to Margrethe Vestager speaking on behalf of the whole European Union, then we can actually make an impact.
And we're speaking for more people. 450 million or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, then I would like to know, do you eat organic food or are you like a vegetarian? Do you eat meat? What do you eat?
Yeah, I am a vegetarian and I've been that for I think 5 years now. So yeah. Okay. And it's for me, it's a lifestyle choice that brings a lot of meaning, and it makes me feel that I'm not contributing to making this world a worse place, but hopefully a better place in the future and for the next generation by consuming the way I'm consuming.
Okay. Then final of these short answer questions is, I think I know the answer here, but should Denmark exit the EU?
No. No. You will find me in the streets campaigning on the Remain side.
Yes. Okay, then we'll go to part 2. Which is about the EU as a union and as a project. And I wanted to start with a quote or a reference to Robert Schuman, one of the founding fathers of the EU. And he cited a famous declaration from 1950 that, quote, Europe will not be made all at once or according to a single plan. It will be built through concrete achievements which first create a de facto solidarity, end quote. So I wanted to know if you could reflect a bit on the foundations and on this quote, and how are these reflected today, and how do you see them evolving in the future.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that when we founded the European Union, we had no idea what would lie ahead in terms of the challenges, but also the positive things that the Union would bring to Europe as a continent. Some of the quotes that are close to my heart are the quote about Europe being united in diversity and working towards an ever closer union. And I think it's important to always respect the unique identity of every member state, being united, but being united in diversity with an underline in the diversity. Because the European Union should not be about creating a Europe where everyone looks alike their neighbor. We shouldn't be 27 copies of each other. We are different member states with our values, with our history, and with all our uniqueness, and that's something to be very aware of. At the same time, working towards an ever closer union is also about always continuing to strengthen the bonds of the European Union, strengthen the work that we do in the EU to face the challenges that lies ahead. And I think for me it's very obvious that since the foundation of the European Union, the challenges crossing borders are not decreasing, they're increasing. We see more and more. We see the climate crisis. We saw the corona crisis in this mandate. We see the question of the war in Ukraine. We see questions of economy, questions of working force, questions of migration and refugees. We have so many policy areas where Europe needs to play an active part, meaning it's a natural thing for me that we are that we cannot make Europe made all at once. It's a journey that we are on.
Okay, and yeah, you mentioned many areas that are kind of either very integrated or getting more integrated, and one of those areas is defense and security. And now, as you mentioned, with the war in Ukraine, but also with the upcoming elections in the United States, where Donald Trump might be elected and create that might create some changes. So a few reflections on security cooperation in Europe and defense foreign policy. Although they're different areas, but that's maybe one of the areas where the EU or the member states rather have been more reluctant to integrate because of these not just national security concerns, but that security is usually a question that is close to the hearts of the member states and national sovereignty. So where do you see, what are kind of your ambitions for security, defense, or even foreign policy cooperation?
I hope we will see more and more foreign policy integration in the European Union, even though it's hard. I think that's what the world needs. I think that's what Europe needs, to have a more common foreign policy than we've seen in the past. I think it's interesting to reflect on the fact that the European Union was founded on a vision for peace and stability in Europe, of course following the Second World War and everything that happened after that. Makes sense to found our European Union on a foundation of peace. But now we see how it's not just a question of ensuring peace between the member states of EU. It's also about creating a safer world and creating a role for Europe to play in a world where China is there, Russia is there, US might elect Donald Trump as a president. If we want to play an active part in the world, it's also about standing together shoulder by shoulder in the European Union.
Okay, interesting. And I'm sure that will create both challenges and opportunities in terms of how do we create more common positions and how do we communicate those to the rest of the world as a union.
Definitely.
So we in a way stand stronger, but also have a common position on issues that are not just European but global.
Agreed.
And then it's a little bit different, but it's one of the areas of cooperation that historically have been extremely integrated. So that's when you mentioned the common agricultural policy before. And a few developments, you could say, have been in the last, not just few months, but the last few years. And historically, it's an area that's been not just subsidized, but very much in focus in all the EU budget, EU policies, and some member states are very protective of that policy as well. And now we see with the green transition, there are more and more competing agendas, and they're not they're all interlinked, but there is still competition between who gets to choose. Is it only green policies, and how do we combine those with the agricultural policies in Europe? And we've seen these farmer protests and so on. And now we see because we're in an election year, of course, we see some more concessions from also the Commission on these areas. So maybe what is your view of not just CAP as a policy, but this whole balance between how to ensure pushing climate change, or not climate change, but green policies into the right directions, but not leaving farmers behind, not leaving different partners behind?
I get why we are worried about the farmers protesting the streets, and I want to underline that I really think that everyone deserves a bright future, and I think we have a responsibility as decision makers to also to reach out to those farmers who are worried about what role they will play in the future of Europe. I just want to really say that I think we should be careful that we don't worry so much about the angry farmers on the street that we completely miss the much bigger challenge, which is the climate crisis, which is temperature rising, which is that it's now we have to make the decisions to make sure that we can live up to the Paris Agreement, to our 2030 goals, to the ambitions that we promised to live up to and where we haven't delivered yet. So it's just important to really see what's the main key challenge to Europe, and climate changes are a real threat to everyone's existing, including the farmers, because they, more than anyone else, are dependent on, for example, the weather. So they're one of the sectors that are affected the most by, for example, droughts or extreme weather. It's important for them as well that we can create some stable environment for them to produce their goods in. And of course, we should have a future for agriculture in Europe. We just need to change the way we think of agriculture and food production.
No, it makes sense. And I think what we see now, for example, with the so-called nature restoration law, we had a common position in Parliament, a common position in the Council, where all the ministers sit, and then suddenly that's all. Some member states suddenly were not happy anymore, and then it all kind of goes to waste, or at least to the next European Parliament. So that's going to be interesting to watch at what tempo or tempi we can march together.
Definitely, and I feel that this, as I said previously, the review of the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP, is, in my opinion, long overdue, but better late than never. And I think it's also important to have other dimensions, for example, climate, nature restoration, some dimensions that are currently totally lacking in the common agricultural policies of the European Union.
Yeah. And speaking of, the European Parliament, where you're trying to to campaign for and get elected, do you think, it might not happen tomorrow, but do you think that the European Parliament should be able to propose laws or initiate laws? Because right now, for the audience, it's the Commission that proposes, and of course the Parliament can nudge, the member states can nudge the Commission, but do you think there should be a formal change there in your view?
I think that makes sense to some degree. The Parliament plays an important democratic role in the European Union, which could be empowered by the possibility of the Parliament proposing legislation. But I'm also aware of the very massive resources and expertise required for the legislative work, and the Commission has that to a greater extent. In this mandate, I've been quite impressed by some of the citizens' initiatives, so where the citizens across countries can sign up for specific laws to be proposed in the EU. That's something that I've been very inspired by. And actually on the agricultural policy area, which we just discussed, there's been several citizen initiatives. For example, the End the Cage Age, so the protection of animal rights in the agriculture policies of the European Union, where I think that the citizens are more progressive than the legislators are.
Yeah, and it's a very telling example that you say, because exactly animal welfare, as you mentioned, citizens' initiatives have been very
progressive
yeah. But then you see actually a commission that promised in the beginning of its mandate,
and they haven't delivered.
We will do something, and then
they haven't delivered.
then we didn't really deliver on that. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how this next parliament will tackle those. Okay. Let's move on a little bit to. We also already spoke a bit about the citizen, but I want to do a whole part 3 on the citizen, and that's more about EU citizenship and that idea. So, do you think in Denmark, are people aware of the fact that they have a EU citizenship? And I mean, what is even a EU citizenship to you? What does it mean? And when did you maybe realize that this was something that you have some rights attached to this? Yeah. You don't have a passport that says EU citizenship, but as an idea.
I like this question. I think it's important to reflect on what EU citizenship means to you. I think for me, when I was 15, with my classmates, I did a study trip to Macedonia, and we were put in a context where we had to discuss our dreams and hopes of the future, something like that. And a lot of us Danish students, age 15, our dreams and hopes for the future were stuff like getting the new iPhone and some big wishes on where to go on holiday for that year, I think. And when we listened to the hopes and dreams of the 15-year-old Macedonians, the young people there, their hopes and dreams were stuff like EU citizenship, for Macedonia to enter the European Union. And I think it was really a privilege check for us to see that something that we took completely for granted, the membership of the European Union, was something that was actually a top priority for an average 15-year-old in Macedonia. And the sad news is that here, 15 years later, that's still their hopes and dreams in Macedonia. They haven't received that membership yet.
Yeah. So it's sometimes our priorities change when our reality is a different one. But it's very interesting and probably also eye-opening at that age and still today, I imagine.
Really eye-opening, and sometimes you don't know what you got until you're confronted with someone who doesn't have that privilege.
Exactly. Yeah. Right to move, right to, I don't know, start a business somewhere or even just travel.
Exactly.
No, it's quite amazing that we don't realize it more, but we should.
And I think every 15-year-old in Denmark deserves a study trip to different parts of Europe to see. Yeah. I think we can learn a lot from that.
Exactly. And I mean, this might be a bit of a theoretical debate, but just for the sake of the debate, do you think after Brexit there was a bit of talk about this EU citizenship as a kind of standalone concept? So of course, I mean, it's not going to happen in any time soon, but this idea of EU citizenship having standalone rights, so that, I mean, theoretically, a person having had a EU citizenship cannot just get it revoked, even though your country is not part of the EU anymore. It's very theoretical, but maybe then a broader also reflection on EU citizenship as a right to the citizen and not just something that you get as a secondary option after your country is like
I get
in the
the
EU
idea.
or not.
But I also believe it's kind of fundamentally a good idea that the rights is stemming from the EU citizenship belonging to citizens of member states. But I do agree, I have a lot of sympathy for the many Brits who feel kind of cheated by an arbitrary referendum, and I think that there are many, especially young Brits, who share the same passion for the European Union as I do, and the passion that drives me to seek this election, and they feel that their future has been put in the hands of others now. I really feel it's an impossible dilemma to solve, whether to have standalone citizenships. I find it hard to imagine, actually.
Yeah, it's probably very theoretical at this stage, but it's an interesting idea of like, what does EU citizenship actually mean when it comes to a dilemma? And I think the European Court of Justice, or the people dealing with the legal kind of interpretation of EU laws and policies, they have also discussed this many times, like what rights are actually attached to this so-called EU citizenship. Yeah. But then when people move, let's say I move to another EU country, they're usually, I mean, we have a lot of rights as EU citizens, but it's usually, first of all, economically active citizens, so the ones that are either studying or working. There's a quite difficult distinction there, but if you're, for example, not working or not studying, you have way less rights, but that's a whole discussion for itself.
Yeah.
But how do you view this, I don't know, like coming the other or immigrant or whatever word you want to use, like how is it, because I think we can all agree that there's still barriers, so if you come from another EU country,
simple stuff like opening a bank account can be a bureaucratic experience.
Yeah, and are there other things that you think we could do better, like also examples, but in general, how do we include more EU citizens as a first across countries without it being like, oh, I'm coming from the outside. No, I'm actually part of the same entity.
Yeah, and I think the free mobility of citizens within the EU is a core value and one of the core foundations of our union. So of course we should have an increase in focus on making it easier for the citizens to move across borders within the European Union. I dream of a EU where we acknowledge that we have in common, instead of viewing other EU citizens as immigrants in a quotation mark. I think some of these examples from restrictive migration policies in member states, I think it's very clear that if some member states really push the rules to the limit in terms of testing the free mobility of citizens, and I'm deeply skeptical of this. I think it's embarrassing when Denmark are putting off so many barriers to internationals coming to work here, coming to study here. I think it's embarrassing how difficult it can be if you are a Dane and you fall in love with a foreigner, someone from another country. It can be really bureaucratic to be allowed to have your boyfriend or your girlfriend with you in Denmark. It shouldn't be that complicated. And if you are citizens from another country and you want to study here, you want to work here, you want to contribute to the Danish society, I really don't see why any politicians, that goes for local or national or European politician, should create barriers for you. We should be encouraging that. We should be encouraging people to travel, to see the world, to work in other countries, to learn new languages, to gain different perspectives from other parts of the world.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it's it seems like when you're telling all these things and also your background, I mean, I think it's an easy question. Do you feel European? You probably do. But then a maybe more interesting question is, you are probably a minority. Like I feel European too, so I'm part of that minority. But how do we ensure that more people feel European?
Yeah. To me, it's also a matter of perspective. I think when I've been traveling in Asia and Japan, for example, when I meet someone from Tokyo, I feel very European in my way of thinking and my way of viewing the world. When I meet someone from other parts of Europe, if I meet up with someone from the southern part of Europe, I might feel very Scandinavian. And if I meet up with a Swede, I might feel very, very Danish. So I think it's also a matter of the nuances or what you compare yourself to. And then again, if I'm meeting someone here in Denmark and we'll discuss what's our hometown, home cities, even that local identity will be tied to me. So I think it depends on how you view the world and what you compare yourself to. To me, it's not about being European or being Danish. It's really a both ways. I'm someone from Hillerød in the northern Zealand. I'm someone from Denmark. I'm someone from Europe. And in the end, I'm a citizen of the world, of course.
Yeah, sort of what we call intrinsic circles dilemma. Yeah,
exactly.
No, but I think it's a good point that those things and those identities can coexist, and it's not a matter of like, oh, you're such a federalist if you feel European. It's nothing to do with that. In my view, it's more a thing of, as you say, perspective, and I think the more we are allowed to travel, the more opportunities we have, and which is also a privilege. It's not something everyone can do. The more you feel maybe more connected to probably, let's say, youth in other countries than maybe someone in another generation in your own country. You can say, oh, actually, I have more in common with those people.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly, I agree. And I think you shouldn't be ashamed to feel European. I mean, I think it's something that that we can highlight more. I was considering to get the European flag tattooed on my body, and people laugh a lot. But I mean, lots of Danes have the Danish flag tattooed on their body. So why shouldn't you be able to get the EU tattoo?
You speak of flags. Do you think the Danish Parliament should have like not just on Europe Day, but should it be like a part of every Like every time the Danish flag is there, because in other countries,
side by side, you
every
can have
at every
them.
press conference, you have like the EU flag and the Swedish flag,
and they can supplement each other. It's a good thing to have. I mean, I love the European flag, as you might already know, and I would love to see the Danes claim it, like so many other countries are doing. So I think it would be a good idea to have the EU flag alongside our national flag, Dannebrog. I would love to see that in Denmark, not just on 9th of May, Europe Day, but all throughout the year.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, let's see what the future brings.
Maybe I should get them tattooed alongside, like the Danish flag and the EU flag. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. At the end, I want to do a small challenge.
Okay.
You're up for it.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that you're gonna have to make up. You have to tell me 3 stories or 3 experiences, small, very short.
Okay.
And then 2 of them have to be true, and 1 of them has to be false. And it can be like, I met the president of the United States in 2017, or something you experienced, someone you met, like something that you can convince me of, and then I have to guess which one is false.
Okay, so 2 of them have to be true, and 1 of them have to be false.
Yes, and then I have to guess.
Okay.
So it's up to you to make them as convincing as possible, if you're up for it.
Okay, yeah, I will. 2 of them have to be true, and 1 of them have to be false, and they revolve around the European Union?
Yep, your life, your EU, whatever you feel like.
Okay. So, story number 1 is that I actually, during the 2016, this crazy year I told you about, I met my now husband, and he was in England as well, but he was campaigning on the Brexit side. He truly believed that the UK would be better off without the European Union, so you can definitely say that we didn't get along very well politically, but luckily we get along personally. Next story is that I'm actually quite into the European languages. I do speak, of course, Danish and English, but also German, French, and Italian. And I hope to take Spanish classes this summer. So I think it would be cool to know even more European languages if I were to represent us all in the European Parliament. I think it's a great ideal to be able to speak to your colleagues in their national tongue as well. And you know, not a lot of Europeans speak Danish, so you better.
Which is fair.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Duolingo. And the third story is that last year, actually, on when I kickstarted my EU campaign, I was campaigning in Copenhagen, and this random lady came up to me, and she was crying. She was just so touched by the idea of the young generation standing on the streets with EU flag, handing out flyers and candy with big smile and positive attitudes, because she hadn't seen anything like that since the 2016 campaign. She was a Brit, and she told me how she completely lost faith in the political system post-Brexit. All the chaos and all the difficult decisions that were to be made. So she really, she actually cried and thanked me so much for putting my candidacy forward for the European Parliament.
Wow. It's a personal. Sometimes politics is very personal.
It really is. It matters to real people.
Yeah. Okay, that was very good. I'm gonna guess that it's the second one that's not true, and the reason I think is probably like half true, and then there's one language in there, so either like Spanish or Italian that you do know, and one that you maybe don't know. I think it was a very convincing story in any case. But okay. I think the 2 other ones, the first one is just so interesting that it has to be true. It's just so good, and the third one was also very compelling.
Okay, yeah, you're completely right. I don't speak so many languages. I wish I spoke so many languages. I do. So it's my dream to be able to speak more European languages. But
so is it Spanish and Italian?
No, I only speak Danish, English, and German. So I really think I should keep up with French sometime soon. I think that should be the next language for me to learn.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll listen in a few years and then hear if you have learned your French.
I have to come back on that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for participating in the challenge. So by now we've actually reached the end of this session. So thanks a lot, and we hope that you will allocate some of your campaign resources to also reach international. Sounds like you're already well into it.
Definitely.
And as you might know, there's so many internationals living in Denmark. Actually, 300,000 people, which are not non-Danish EU citizens. So that's actually quite a lot of voter
really
group.
is.
And they can, as we've talked about, join the electoral roll and vote for a candidate in Denmark on the 9th of June. And there was a poll by Last Week in Denmark, which is an international a newsletter in different languages that showed that almost a third of the respondents were actually considering to vote in Denmark. So that's already a good sign.
Really interesting. And remember to register if you want to make your vote count.
Yeah.
And I think this election, I mean, there's so much at stake, so we might see that every vote does count in terms of which European Parliament will we see past the 9th of June. Will we see an extreme right-wing turnout, or will we have a more progressive green parliament? I know what I'm hoping for, of course, is a strong mandate for the social liberals, but I mean, that's all up to the voters.
It is. It's up to the voters, and it's also up to the candidates to speak up about the European project.
To convince you guys
then it seems like
to get out the vote.
Exactly. So we strongly encourage for everyone listening to register to vote if you're not if you are an EU citizens but not with a Danish passport, and it requires that you either go online and find it at Borgerservice or go to your local municipality and ask. And then you can stay tuned for the next episode of VOTEHOME. Which is this podcast series that speaks to different candidates to the European Parliament in Denmark. So Sigrid Friis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for taking the time to focus on this very important topic of international voters in Denmark. I hope to see some of you on election day. You can find me on the list B, Radikale Venstre. Sigrid Friis.
Thank you.